You've been living with a lie, not the kind you can see, but the kind that silently shapes who you think you are. Since childhood, you've measured yourself with someone else's ruler, your worth, your pace, your intelligence, all judged by a system that was never made for you. And so you began to shrink, to doubt, to feel broken, because you were trying to climb a tree when you were born to swim. Albert Einstein once said, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid." That one truth, if felt, not just heard, could end a lifetime of self-doubt. And in the next few minutes, that's exactly what we're going to do, not with motivation, not with fake confidence, but with a forbidden truth no one ever taught you. You were never the problem, the story was. Let's begin. And before we go deeper, if something in you already feels seen, if some small part of you whispered "finally" while hearing those words, then I want to ask you something gentle, but real. Stay. Not just for this video, but for yourself. Subscribe. Not because I need numbers, but because maybe, for the first time, you've found a space that speaks your language. A space where your doubt is not judged, but understood. Where your sensitivity is not weakness, but wisdom waiting to unfold. So if that feels true, click subscribe like you're saying yes to remembering who you really are. You belong here. Now let's keep going. You're holding it together. At least, that's what it looks like from the outside. You wake up, go through the motions, respond to the messages, show up where you're supposed to. You even laugh when expected. But inside, something's quietly collapsing. Not in a dramatic, fall-apart kind of way. It's more subtle than that. Like a leak in a tire you didn't notice until you started drifting off course. There's a name for what you're feeling, but no one taught it to you. Emotional overload. It's not just stress. It's when everything, your thoughts, your feelings, your to-do list, your past, starts to stack on top of each other, layer by layer, until you can barely breathe under the weight of pretending. You're fine. But what if I told you Einstein saw this coming? Not just in science, in the human spirit. Most people know him for equations and genius. Few realize he spent just as much time staring at the inner world, the silence between thoughts, the beauty inside chaos. He believed that our biggest problems wouldn't be solved by more speed, but by something most people have forgotten: how to access stillness. He once said, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth but delicious in maturity." Think about that. The very thing we run from, solitude, pause, quiet, might be the exact thing that could save us. Because this isn't about fixing you. You're not broken. You're full. You've been absorbing so much for so long, without release. And your mind, your nervous system, your body, they're just trying to hold the line. So before we begin, I want you to know something. This isn't just a video. It's an invitation to slow down, to breathe again, to finally ask yourself a question no one ever gave you permission to ask. What if the reason I feel overwhelmed is because I've never been allowed to feel at all? Let's begin. There's this quiet story we've all been handed, that if we're tired, overwhelmed, or slow to respond to life, it must mean something is wrong with us. That we're weak, undisciplined, broken, that we just need to try harder, wake up earlier, drink more coffee, fix our mindset. But what if that's a lie? What if what we call laziness is really exhaustion? What if what looks like procrastination is just emotional overload no one ever taught you how to release? Einstein didn't move fast, not in the way people romanticize today. He was often described as slow, distracted, even disconnected from what the world deemed important. But that slowness, it wasn't a flaw. It was where his genius lived. See, while the rest of the world was running toward results, Einstein paused. He allowed ideas to breathe. He wasn't driven by speed. He was moved by something deeper, intuition, wonder, curiosity. And that only rises when there's space. Now look at your life. Look at the pressure. To respond immediately, to keep up, to be productive even in your rest, to turn your healing into a checklist. It's no wonder you're tired. You're not broken. You're saturated, and no one ever told you how dangerous emotional saturation is. Because it's not just the big traumas that shut us down, it's the constant accumulation of unprocessed emotions. The tiny moments of frustration you never voiced, the disappointments you minimized, the griefs you swallowed because life had to go on. Over time, your system starts sending signals, not with words, but with symptoms. You lose motivation, you lose focus, you forget things mid-sentence, you snap at people you love or go silent for days. You scroll for hours and still feel numb, and the worst part? You blame yourself for all of it. But let me ask you, when was the last time you felt safe enough to feel everything you're holding? Einstein once said, "A calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with constant restlessness." What if he was pointing at exactly what we've forgotten? That your nervous system isn't designed to run at full capacity forever. That it needs stillness the way your body needs oxygen. That slowing down isn't a sign of failure. It's your soul remembering it was never built for a world that never stops. And I know rest feels impossible. When the world keeps spinning, when the bills keep coming, when people expect things of you. But this isn't about disappearing from your life. It's about showing up to it differently, with softness, with space, with the same patience Einstein gave to the mysteries of the universe, but turned inward. Because you too are a mystery worth exploring. You don't have to understand everything you're feeling. You just have to stop running from it. Emotional overload is your system saying, "I need less noise. I need less pretending. I need room to breathe." So today, maybe you don't need another productivity hack. Maybe you don't need to push through. Maybe you just need to ask a better question. What would my life look like if I treated my exhaustion like sacred information instead of something to be ashamed of? Einstein once wrote to a friend during a difficult period in his life saying, "I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in maturity." He wasn't glorifying isolation. He was recognizing something most people never allow themselves to learn. That stillness can be a source of power. That solitude can become healing when you stop filling it with noise. And maybe that's the next step for you. Not to go back to who you were before life got so heavy, but to become someone new. Someone slower, deeper, kinder with yourself. Because the world doesn't need you to be more efficient. It needs you to be more real. And that begins the moment you stop apologizing for being overwhelmed and start listening to what that overwhelm is trying to teach you. There's a moment, maybe you felt it, where even the smallest task feels impossible. You stare at your inbox, a message you should reply to, a conversation you meant to have, dishes in the sink, a decision you've postponed for days, and none of it is dramatic. But it all feels unbearable. And here's what's wild. No one else sees it. You smile. You show up. You nod at the right times. But inside, it's like your body is screaming underwater, and every breath takes effort. That, right there, is emotional overload. And here's the part no one tells you. When you reach this point, you can't think your way out. You can't analyze it away. You can't make another list, add another goal, or read another productivity article and expect relief. Because what's happening inside you is not a problem to solve. It's a signal. It's your nervous system asking for something you may not even remember how to give. Presence. Einstein lived much of his life in solitude, not because he couldn't connect with others, but because he understood that his mind and his soul needed space. Not more information, not more stimulation, but space. He once said, "I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me." Now think about that. Swim in silence. That's not just poetic, it's prescriptive. When you're emotionally flooded, the answer isn't to swim harder. It's to float, to stop resisting what you feel long enough to understand it. But we weren't taught how to float, were we? We were taught to push through, to be productive through the pain, to turn every emotion into a task. Feel anxious, meditate. Feel sad, reframe. Feel tired, biohack your sleep and keep moving. We turned healing into another job, and in the process, forgot how to actually feel. But Einstein, he stayed with the feeling. He followed his intuition, even when it didn't look logical, even when it made no sense to others, because he knew that the deepest truths don't arrive on command. They emerge in stillness. So here's a radical idea. What if the most intelligent thing you can do today isn't to try harder, but to feel deeper? What if your overwhelm isn't asking for efficiency, but honesty? Try this. The next time you feel emotionally flooded, don't reach for your phone. Don't try to distract. Just pause. Place your hand on your chest, literally. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what am I carrying that isn't mine? You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to figure it out. You just need to feel it, for real, without running. Maybe it's a pressure you inherited from your parents. Maybe it's the invisible weight of being the strong one. Maybe it's years of internalized urgency, perfectionism, or fear. Whatever. It's speaking. And if you're brave enough to feel it, even for a few seconds, something opens. Because overwhelm is often unspoken grief. Grief for all the times you weren't allowed to rest. Grief for the self you had to perform. Grief for the gentleness you buried just to survive. And here's the paradox. You don't relieve overwhelm by doing more. You relieve it by coming home to the part of you that's been overwhelmed for years and finally saying, I see you. I believe you. I'm not going to push you away anymore. That's what Einstein did. He didn't treat his mind like a machine to optimize. He treated it like a garden to be tended, gently, patiently, with awe. He once said, "Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better." Why? Because nature doesn't rush. The tree doesn't force itself to bloom in winter. The ocean doesn't apologize for its waves. And you? You were never meant to function like a robot. You're not here to be endlessly productive. You're here to feel, and from that feeling, to create a life that's rooted in truth. So if you're overloaded right now, this isn't a call to hustle. It's a call to come closer, to the part of you that's never felt safe enough to be vulnerable, to the softness you packed away to be strong, to the ache that's been asking, not for solutions, but for presence. You don't need to understand everything today. You don't need to clear your schedule or rearrange your entire life. Just do one thing differently. Let one moment be real. Let yourself sit down when you want to keep going. Let yourself cry without making it mean something is wrong. Let yourself be confused, tired, human, because you're not here to be invincible. You're here to be whole. And that wholeness, it begins when you stop abandoning yourself every time. You feel too much. So right now, if everything feels like too much, know this. You're not failing. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're at a sacred threshold, the one between performance and presence. And if you stay, if you don't rush past it, don't distract, don't minimize, something will begin to shift. Maybe not loudly. Maybe not visibly, but quietly. A part of you will start to come home, just like Einstein did, not by force, but by trust. In the mystery, in the slowness, in the silence that doesn't demand, but invites. Because when you finally stop running from your emotional overload, you realize it was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to lead you back to the self you forgot how to feel. Most people assume resilience looks like toughness, like grit, like powering through no matter how exhausted you feel. But Einstein knew something else. He understood that resilience wasn't about being unshakable. It was about being deeply connected to something real, even when everything around you felt uncertain. There's this beautiful, almost forgotten side to Einstein that rarely makes it into textbooks. He wasn't just the genius behind relativity or quantum theory. He was a soul who lived in tension, between logic and feeling, between clarity and mystery, between pressure from the world and peace within himself. And perhaps what made him truly brilliant wasn't how much he knew, but how much he felt. See, when he was young, he didn't fit in. He was quiet, sensitive, misunderstood. Teachers told him he was slow. He spoke late. He drifted in class. He felt things others didn't. See, he wasn't the picture of success. He was the portrait of someone who didn't yet know how to belong. And yet, he didn't close off. He didn't harden to survive. He stayed open. Imagine that for a second. Imagine you're that kid. You're told you're not enough. You don't speak at the right age. You don't think the normal way. And instead of shrinking, instead of turning your feelings into shame, you let them become fuel for wonder. That was Einstein's resilience. Not to pretend, not to impress, but to stay curious, especially about the parts of life that hurt. So many of us were taught the opposite. We were told resilience meant ignoring how we felt. That strength was about hiding pain, not exploring it. That the way through emotion was around it, not into it. But that version of resilience, it's killing us. We're drowning in quiet anxiety, smiling while burnt out, achieving things that leave us feeling emptier than before. And still, we call it strength. But Einstein would have called it disconnection, because true resilience, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from pushing through. It comes from pausing long enough to reconnect with what matters. He once said, "A calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with constant restlessness." He didn't say this to sound wise. He lived it. He turned down fame. He escaped regimes. He walked away from expectations. All to protect something few people value anymore: inner peace. And maybe that's what emotional resilience really is. The ability to protect your inner world when the outer one demands you abandon it. So if you've been feeling emotionally overwhelmed, here's the truth. You don't need to become stronger in the way the world defines it. You need to become more faithful to your inner experience, even when it's messy, confusing, or unexplainable. Try this. The next time life feels like it's caving in, don't ask, "How do I get out of this?" Ask, "How can I stay with this without abandoning myself?" What does that look like? Sometimes it means canceling plans and sitting with your journal for 5 minutes. Sometimes it means letting yourself cry in the car instead of forcing a smile at work. Sometimes it means taking a walk, not to hit 10,000 steps, but to hear your own thoughts for the first time all week. These aren't small things. They're sacred things. Because every time you choose presence over performance, you're strengthening a different kind of resilience, one that doesn't collapse under pressure because it was never built on pretending. Einstein's life wasn't easy. He lost family. He faced exile. He felt the weight of global expectation. And still, he kept returning to the same place. Silence, stillness, simplicity. He found power in pausing. And so can you. That's the secret. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. And real people feel. Real people get overwhelmed. Real people break down sometimes, not because they're weak, but because they're alive. And the ones who learn to stay with that, to stay soft in the storm, they're the ones who emerge, not harder, but clearer. So ask yourself, what if I stopped trying to be strong the world's way? What if I redefined resilience as tenderness under pressure? What if I let my feelings teach me instead of scare me? Because once you do that, something starts to shift. You stop reacting. You start reflecting. You stop trying to win. You start trying to feel again. And slowly, not instantly, but gently, you begin to come back to yourself. That's what Einstein did. That's the kind of genius we rarely talk about. The genius of staying close to your heart. Even when the world rewards only the mind. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to push to be powerful. You just need to return again and again to the truth inside you that says, I am not broken. I am becoming. And I don't need to rush this. That is real strength. And it's yours to claim, right now. Let's be honest. There are days when it all just feels too much. Not because something dramatic happened, but because everything is happening. All the time. The constant alerts. The expectations. The pressure to perform. The noise of a world that never lets you be still. You carry it in your chest, like a quiet weight, but no one sees it. Because from the outside, you look fine. You're doing the things, keeping it together, smiling when you need to. But inside, it's like your soul is whispering, I can't keep living like this. And here's the thing no one tells you. Emotional overload isn't always about trauma. Sometimes it's the slow erosion of your inner world. One unchecked pressure at a time. One yes too many. One boundary too weak. One day after another of silencing what you feel, just to survive. And this is exactly where Einstein would pause. He wasn't just a mind obsessed with solving equations. He was a human being who deeply understood the limits of mental overload. He knew that the more the world spins, the more crucial it is to protect your quiet. In one of his letters, Einstein wrote, I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in maturity. Let that land. He called solitude delicious. Not because he hated people, not because he needed to escape, but because he realized something most of us forget. Your nervous system is not built for constant input. And yet, that's exactly what modern life demands. You wake up and check your phone before you've even taken a breath. You scroll through the curated highlights of other people's lives. You jump from task to task, notification to notification, all while ignoring the soft voice inside that says, slow down, you're not okay. But Einstein would say, that voice matters. In fact, it might be the most intelligent part of you. Because emotional overload is not weakness. It's not failure. It's not proof you can't handle life. It's your system's way of saying you've disconnected from your natural rhythm. You're trying to run on data instead of depth. You're living like a machine, but you're not one. Einstein knew that rest wasn't laziness. It was wisdom. He took long walks alone. He played the violin in silence. He wrote letters slowly, with attention. He created space between thoughts, because he understood. Breakthroughs don't come from force. They come from stillness. And maybe that's what you've been missing. Not another productivity hack. Not another late-night motivational quote. But the courage to say, I can't keep numbing my exhaustion with activity. Because here's the truth. You don't need more motivation. You need more connection to your breath, your body, your truth. And no, the world won't slow down for you, but you can slow down within it. You can start to reclaim your space. You can stop treating your emotional signals as obstacles and start honoring them as guidance. So here's something to try. Just once this week, when you feel that wave, that overwhelm, that fatigue, that invisible pressure, don't push through it. Pause. Put your phone away. Step outside. Place your hand on your heart and just ask, what needs my attention right now, inside me? And whatever answer comes, even if it's just silence, don't run from it. Stay. Because in that staying, something ancient wakes up. A memory of who you were before the noise, before the proving, before the burnout. Einstein wasn't productive because he ignored his feelings. He was productive because he listened to them. He protected his peace like it was sacred, and it was. Yours is too. But you have to believe it, enough to stop chasing what the world says you should want, and start listening to what your inner self actually needs, which might be rest, or solitude, or an hour with no screens, no goals, no pretending, not to escape life, but to return to it. Because you can't feel joy when your heart is cluttered with noise. You can't feel inspiration when your nervous system is in survival mode. And you can't access genius, your own unique kind of genius, until you slow down enough to hear it whisper back. You're already enough. You've just been too busy to feel it. So if you've been feeling heavy, good. That means you're awake. That means your system hasn't given up on you. That means there's still something sacred inside you, calling you home, not to collapse, but to come back to life. And maybe, just maybe, today's the day you start to listen. There's something you've probably never been told. Feeling deeply, being emotionally sensitive, easily overwhelmed, prone to burnout, is not a flaw. It's a kind of intelligence. A way of perceiving the world that most people have forgotten how to access. But because the world is loud, fast, and brutally unforgiving, we're taught to see that depth as weakness. You were probably told to toughen up, to stop overthinking, to grow thicker skin, and so you did. You learned how to hide the depth of your empathy. You practiced looking calm when your heart was screaming. You trained yourself to survive in a world that doesn't reward stillness, softness, or slowness. But here's what Einstein would say to that. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Let that sink in. We've built an entire culture on logic, data, results, while silencing the very part of ourselves that feels, the part that senses beauty, that absorbs tension in a room, that cries at songs you can't explain, that aches when someone else is hurting, even if they never said a word. That's not you being weak. That's you being human. And Einstein, for all his intellect, never sacrificed that humanness. He didn't just observe the universe. He felt it. He talked about awe, about wonder, about mystery as the most beautiful experience a person could have. He knew the world doesn't need more people who feel less. It needs more people who feel fully. Because when you numb your sensitivity, you also numb your brilliance. You lose access to the wisdom in your sadness, to the clarity in your discomfort, to the quiet truth your body whispers long before your mind understands. And yes, sometimes it hurts to feel everything so deeply. Sometimes it's exhausting to carry invisible emotions through a world that rewards emotional detachment. But here's what I want you to hear, that emotional weight you carry. It might be the very thing that makes you powerful. Because while others numb, you notice. While others distract, you feel. While others rush, you pause. And in that pause is where truth lives. So if you've ever been told, you're too much, you're too intense, you're too emotional, I want you to rewrite that script right now, because maybe you're not too anything. Maybe you're finally beginning to access the part of yourself that the world told you to hide, because it didn't know what to do with it. Einstein didn't hide his sensitivity. He gave it room to breathe, and in that room, revolutionary ideas were born. So what if, instead of trying to get rid of your overwhelm, you got curious about what it's trying to show you? What if the reason you feel so much is because you're meant to notice what others ignore? What if your emotional sensitivity is the compass, not the curse? Here's something radical to try. The next time you feel that emotional overload coming, don't fight it. Sit with it. Breathe into it and ask it. What are you trying to reveal? Maybe it's not asking you to collapse. Maybe it's asking you to wake up, to remember that you're not a machine. You're not a checklist. You're not a productivity algorithm. You're a soul, a feeling, sensing, intuiting being, living in a world that tries to convince you otherwise. But here's the quiet rebellion. You don't have to listen to that world anymore. You can slow down. You can unplug. You can cry. You can rest without guilt. Because that's what the world needs most right now. Not more perfection, but more permission to be real. And Einstein? He wasn't afraid of the real. He invited it. He knew that the deepest breakthroughs don't come through mental force, but through emotional truth. And the moment you start listening to your truth again, everything changes. Not because you become someone new, but because you finally stop pretending you're someone you're not. And in that return to yourself, your power begins. So here we are. After all the thoughts, the stories, the feelings, maybe there's one thing you're starting to see more clearly now. You were never meant to carry everything. You were never meant to be everything for everyone. You were never broken, just overwhelmed, overstimulated, overpressured by a world that doesn't know how to slow down. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you're starting to feel that it's okay to stop, to breathe, to soften, to stop pushing so hard and start listening to the part of you that's been whispering, I need space. I need peace. That's what Einstein understood, not just as a scientist, but as a human being. He didn't chase noise. He made space for silence. He didn't hide from the unknown. He rested inside it. And maybe that's your next step too. Not to fix everything, not to figure it all out, but just to stay with yourself, to let this be the moment where you stop trying to be enough for the world and finally feel enough right here as you are. Because truthfully, you are. You don't have to earn it. You just have to remember it. And if something in you stirred while watching this, if something softened or a small breath returned you didn't even know you'd lost, then I want to ask you something. Real. Take a moment, just 30 seconds, and comment below. Tell me, what part of you are you ready to stop apologizing for? Or maybe, what's one small thing you can let go of today just to make space to feel again? Because when you name it, you begin to reclaim it. And if you found value in this, share it with someone who might be carrying too much right now. Sometimes a single reminder, a single pause, is all it takes to begin healing. And finally, if you're ready to go deeper, I've left something powerful waiting for you in the next video. This Einstein idea could break a lifetime of self-doubt. It's not just a video. It's a return to your peace, your clarity, your voice. I'll meet you there. And until then, stay with yourself. You're not too much. You're just finally feeling what's real.